Welcome to Salvage, a podcast for conversations with artists about the repurposed materials they use in their art practice. Please welcome to my conversation with Nyah Estevez. Nyah is a community organizer for Beyond Plastics, which is a really wonderful organization fighting plastic pollution in the United States. And I thought it would be great to finish off the first season of Salvage, the podcast, with a representative from Beyond Plastics who can fill us in on what she thinks the role of artists could be in fighting climate change and plastic pollution. And she could also tell us what is it that is so bad about plastic pollution. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Here we go. Thank you, Nyah. I have been an alumni of Beyond Plastics now for a few years. It's a wonderful organization. So I really appreciate that you have found the time to join me on my podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited. I love talking about art, so this is great.
Oh, good. Are you an artist?
Yeah, I'd like to do more of it, and find time to do it, more of it, but I'm a part-time artist.
Okay,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. It all counts.
Yeah.
Was that a cat or a dog?
It was a cat.
Aw.
And he won't
And there's the
and
cat.
he won't stop. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. All good. So what kind of art do you do?
I've mostly worked with acrylic paint, but I'm just now getting into animation, and I've been slowly doing it on my iPad, which has been kind of a learning curve. But it's been fun. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, wow. And what do you do for Beyond Plastics?
I'm a community organizer at Beyond Plastics, which I know that title kind of confuses people.
Yeah. Please tell us what it means.
Yeah. So in general, I like to think of, community organizers as a position that empowers individuals and communities to take collective action. And typically organizers help develop programs and strategies. They do a lot of coalition building, so building relationships with community members and other environmental organizations,
Ah,
create informational resources, and kind of facilitate training sessions on grassroots organizing tools. At Beyond Plastics specifically, I work with over 150 environmental groups
oh my
across the
God.
country. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I help them implement plastic reduction campaigns at the local, state, and national level.
Okay. What does that mean? So an organization like a local citizens organized in a town, or
Yeah, it depends. So there's some organizations that I work for that are really established, and let's say they're like a Sierra Club chapter, right? And so they're part of, a national, international organization,
Mhm.
and they have a policy objective that they want to work on plastic reduction. And so they kind of affiliate with Beyond Plastics, and I work with them on kind of carrying out advocacy, education, policy campaigns. And then smaller organizations that are, grassroots, just two individuals in a local community that really want to work on plastic reduction. And so I kind of work with them on advancing environmental policies at the local level.
Okay, so what does that mean, advancing environmental policies at a local level? Like what could two people in a community do?
So there's a lot of things. The most common is kind of working on a skip the stuff law, that which will require, um, deliver restaurants to eliminate single-use plastic in their delivery
Mhm.
services. So they can also work on banning, a plastic straw ban or a plastic bag ban in their local community.
So you would tell them how to approach the government in their community about this?
Yeah, and so Beyond Plastics has a lot of model bills, and so I help them kind of apply that model bill to their specific community.
Mhm.
And also a lot of this work has to do with educating the public and like advocacy.
Mhm.
And that means, going to tabling events and working at your
What's a
local summer
tabling event?
market. Kind of setting up a table at a local farmers market, having resources that people can read. Um, Sometimes people do presentations at schools or libraries and kind of working through that.
Hmm.
Just
Oh,
raising awareness. Yeah.
no, that's a huge, huge job.
Yeah. It's all.
Keeps you very busy, I'm sure. Do you travel or do you do this mostly over Zoom?
Well, my job full time is remote, but I do get to travel. I live in New York City, so I get to when there's a lobby day in Albany, I'll go to Albany,
Mhm.
kind of do that. We've done, all staff trips to Port Arthur, Texas,
Oh, wow.
last January or this past the New Year's coming up, but January 2024. Yeah. So,
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I think I might have briefly passed you when, was it March? The march against plastics that happened in New York City. I don't know, like so much happened already this year. I don't remember. It was a whole big march that was against plastic pollution, or maybe it was more than just plastic, more than pollution.
oh, was this the March to End Fossil Fuels
That's
last
it.
September?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah.
That was when?
That was September of 2023, so that was last year.
Really? Oh
Yeah,
my God.
I know, there's so many events and so
Ah. If you told me this was last spring, this past spring, I would totally believe you. Wow. Just time. Time
yeah.
just flies. Oh my goodness. But that was really cool. I have actually have never participated in a march before. So that was
Oh, that's
very
great,
exciting to
yeah.
me. Have you done a lot of those?
Um, I have never organized around a march and kind of been on the back ends of a march before, of stepping into this role, but in high school and during college, I was, really into activism, so I attended marches often. But organizing a march was completely different. Um, but it was exhilarating and it was really nice to kind of just act as I guess a liaison to empower people to kind of attend and get
Mhm.
excited about it.
So were you organizing that march directly, or were you just working sort of on behalf of Beyond Plastics part of the organization of it?
I was just working on behalf of Beyond Plastics and kind of rallying up our volunteers that we work with to attend the march.
Hmm.
I think it was Extinction Rebellion that was part of
Yeah,
organizing that march.
I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
And as an artist, do you only you address kind of single-use plastics, and is that your main focus?
Yeah, I chose that as my main focus. I mean, there's so many different focuses. So I was, heck, I can talk about trees, I can talk about animals and biodiversity. There's so many ways to go. Um, but because I started using plastic in my art practice, that led me to, dig into the research and figure out what this material was. And that's how I discovered Beyond Plastics. So I was like, you know what? It's better if I focus on one thing than just be all over the place.
Mm.
That seems like that would be more productive. So, and then once I took one of Judith's classes, that was it.
Yeah.
How did you discover Beyond Plastics, or did they find you?
In college, I was in kind of the environmental activism space on campus, and there was a lecture on like 101 plastics that my colleague Megan Wolf was
Mm.
lecturing, and I just went, and it just changed my entire perspective, and I never realized how much plastic was around me and how concerning that was. And so I kind of just went up to her after the lecture and I was like, I'm really interested in getting involved. I don't know if you guys are hiring. I sent her my resume,
Mhm.
and yeah, and then she got back to me like 2 weeks later and she's like, do you want to be an organizer? Do you want to interview? And I was like, yeah. And so I interviewed, and I've been working here for almost a year and a half now.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. So it was life changing. I like Megan. I've met with her a bunch of times. She's great. before I get into what questions I really want to ask you, can you give like a short overview of what Beyond Plastics is? Because I've shared about it before in various conversations and on my social media, but hearing it from, from someone inside would be great.
Yeah, so Beyond Plastics it was launched in January 2019, and it's a nationwide project based at Bennington College in Vermont. And the goal is to end plastic pollution everywhere. That's our mission. And we do this through working with policy experts and grassroots advocates at the local level to kind of build an effective movement to end plastic pollution. And so we really emphasize, policy change and local leadership to do this. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, now for my burning question of the hour. What do you think is an artist's role in fighting plastic pollution?
Okay, this is a big question. I like to view artists as a crucial role in just environmental stewardship in general. A lot of this work as an organizer and just in general is founded on data and statistics. And I think art has the ability to make these like really dense and daunting facts more tangible for the public. I think being able to see and feel and, sometimes smell depending on, the project, allows for there to be an entirely new interaction between the public and, the plastics crisis at hand.
Mhm.
And so I view art as a tool to move people in ways that data and statistics can't. Um, and in that way, I view the role of an artist in the fight to end plastic pollution as one that helps shift, that cultural and political landscape to be more inclusive. And I think when I see an artist create a really thought-provoking piece that draws attention to the plastic crisis, it allows for there to be, that personal connection between the viewer and the issue at hand. And so it's fostering these important conversations around plastic pollution that are personal and authentic to the community that is witnessing it.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think artists raise awareness on the plastics crisis by, simply just addressing it in their work. And it
Mhm.
also inspires people to take action. And in that way, I'm just I'm I'm just thinking now, I see the role of an artist and a community organizer very similar in
Ah,
that they're kind of like both actors raising awareness and kind of inspiring action,
mhm.
um, for the public. And I think in terms of, artists, and I guess you could say the same for an organizer, but more specifically artists, I think by creating awareness and kind of tapping into that more emotional, psychological aspect to people, right?
Mhm.
Artists are pushing us to think more critically um, about environmental issues, specifically as we're talking about right now, single-use plastics, in terms of how to make environmentally responsible choices for themselves, but also how we as a collective can move away from this like culture of this throwaway culture and
Yeah,
like this, like, that we've become so accustomed to, which is so sad. It's so sad.
yeah. No, I agree with you. We are so used to it. And even when you're aware of it, it's very difficult to stop.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Because you go to, like, a restaurant or, like, you get takeout, and they'll just, like, put single-use plastic utensils, and you're like, "Oh, well, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna throw it away, but it's gonna end up in a landfill, or I'm gonna use it and then ingest all those toxic chemicals inside my body." Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Do you have an example that you can think of art that you saw that might have had impact like this?
That's a great question. My colleague Jenny Gutlitz, kind of highlighted and has worked with, is Robin Frohart.
Mm.
They have an exhibition at Mass MoCA called The Plastic Bag Store.
Yeah, she's really amazing. Unfortunately, that exhibition just ended. I
I
don't
know,
know.
I know. It's great, but it's great because it's like this immersive experience, and and they're Brooklyn based, and it's kind of addressing the plastics issue in a very critical lens, but also with a bit of humor.
Yeah, with
Um,
a lot of humor, I would say,
a lot of
actually.
humor, yeah, and you kind of, you know, it raises questions about our culture of consumption and whether it is really convenient, right? Is it really convenient?
Yeah,
Probably not in the long run.
right.
It's just like that instant gratification that we have, especially at the supermarket. Um, when you're like buying bananas and your bananas are wrapped in plastic for no
You
like
know,
absolutely no
I
reason.
just that's an example I give a lot of times. Like, why? I
There's
just
just no,
don't understand.
the banana peel is the packaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. It's the mind boggles. Wow. So what do you think an artist like what kind of art do you think an artist should make to make the most impact?
That's an interesting question. I don't like to define rules in art. I think as long as an artist is being uh, yeah, I think there's so many avenues that artists can go through. I think whether you wanna, like the plastic bag, um, store situation where you want to touch on, this collective experience that everyone is constantly engaging with, or whether you wanna do more personal and you're kind of like your personal connection with single-use plastics or the plastics crisis in general. I think as long as you're making some sort of critique
Mhm.
on the detrimental effects of plastic production and plastic waste, I think it will bring awareness and inspire action for the public. And now I'm just thinking in terms of like how can an artist make the most impact? I think just, being cautious of what's going on, in the world, if that makes sense. I think, like,
Yeah.
partnering up with environmental organizations or kind of tapping into that environmental network is really important and kind of fostering community engagement through your art, um, is important. But I wouldn't say that there's necessarily a specific
Okay.
thing that an artist needs to, like, do to, start conversations around plastic pollution. As long as you're making the work that's addressing it in an authentic way, I think that will show and will
Mm.
start conversation regardless.
Thank you. What so this is a personal opinion. Do you think that art just that kind of beats you over the head with the message is more impactful than more of a subtle art that might pull you in with the beauty of it and only then you'll see what it's made of? Which one do you think is more impactful? And I
That
know it's totally just an opinion thing. Everybody's different.
yeah, it is I don't know, I talk a lot about this, um, with my friends actually, because in terms of, you know, single-use plastic, if I see, a piece that is beautifully made, I think it can I don't know, it's like a double-edged sword, right? So it's like or if you're not thinking critically, right? You're like, "That's a great material that I can use to make beautiful art," but you're not really, y it takes away from the overall message, which I would hope that the overall message would be stop using plastic, right? And not to encourage people to use plastic. And so, I think that's a hard question. Personally, in within my own art, I like to be very subtle about it.
Mhm.
Um, and when I'm making, a political stance or making a stance that addresses, human rights, and because when we're talking about plastic production, we're talking about,
Yeah.
environmental justice and human rights. I do like to be subtle about it, but also I like in being subtle about it, I would not wanna make it, this beautiful thing. I think there's beauty in something being really ugly, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
What do they say? Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So yeah,
Yeah, so I think
a rust stain on a side of on the sidewalk or something could be really beautiful too. So yeah.
yeah, yeah, so artists definitely have to, especially when they're engaging with plastics, definitely walk that fine line between, making something beautiful, but making sure that the public is like receiving that and being like, oh, this is a problem.
Well, thank you for that. All right. I don't want to keep you too long, but I have one final question. Could you give me three, let's say three reasons on why single-use plastic is so bad for the environment? Like, what are the three main things?
Well, the first one, I think it comes down to the production of plastic and climate change. Over 98% of plastics are made from fossil fuel carbons, such as oil and gas. And so, you know, the production of single-use plastics emits greenhouse gases and at every point of its life cycle, which, worsens the effects of climate change. Um, and and so that's one, right? So the climate change aspect. Um, Two is the issue of microplastics in litter. So single-use plastics don't biodegrade, and so they just break into smaller and smaller pieces, also known as micro and nanoplastics, which means that they often stay in the environment for hundreds of years, and we're now only just beginning to kind of see that wide presence of microplastics. Um, and when there's, plastic litter on the ground, it's easily washed away and kind of travels into our waterways.
Yeah.
And so microplastics and plastic waste in general is just destroying the land itself. And three, in that, marine animals also bear the burden of, kind of this influx of garbage and in their habitats. And millions of marine life and wildlife die each year because of, either plastic entanglement and other impacts. And microplastics specifically can be easily accumulated inside of an animal's body and cause serious health issues.
Including
Um,
human animals, apparently.
yes, yes. Microplastics has been found in human lung tissue, the placenta, in our bloodstream, in our lungs. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it could get pretty scary out there if we don't do something about it.
I
That's
agree. I
yeah.
agree. And I think right now more than ever, artists and just local leadership in general, um, that's a great avenue to kind of create effective change.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Naya. That was great. That
Thank
was
you.
that
I
was
love talking about art.
good. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and found out a little more about single-use plastic pollution to keep in mind for your art practice. Thank you for listening to the first season of Salvage. I really, really appreciate all your likes and comments and shares and ratings. Please keep them going and stay tuned. Season 2 is coming. This podcast was created, produced, and edited by me, Natalia Korover. Theme music by R.C. Gaida. Find out more about me at artbynatalia.com. Find out about my community at repurposercollective.com and about my education initiatives at ecoloop.art. Thank you for listening. Please rate and review and share this podcast with anyone that you think might like it. Thanks so much.